Steve Evans, the chairman of the Republican Party here in Lubbock. How are you this morning, Steve?
Pretty good. What happened to you is always my worst fear when I've got a guest host, either a cold, a cough, the flu, or something where I got to pull an audible.
Well, you can talk as long as you want while I get this under control. What's
I know you're talking about Reagor, and I want to weigh in, but I don't really have a lot to add. I think that nobody really fully understands what happened, and I don't think that we really know how deep this thing goes. But I think what's clear is 700 people in the city of Lubbock are likely to lose their jobs, and that is a tragedy. Hopefully they'll be able to find employment somewhere else, and hopefully other car lots can pick them up. And but I think that's the real impact to our economy. I mean, we're going to see a financial impact, financial blow to Lubbock economy too. But I think that's probably the highlight of the day for me is a whole lot of people that had nothing to do with what was happening are going to lose their jobs.
It kind of points to the danger of putting all your eggs in one basket, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I hate to speculate. I mean, I could say that may not be exactly what he did. I think the baskets were distributed for a very good reason, just my opinion. But yeah, but your average person that's either working in finance, is working in the detail shop, the mechanic shop, all the various arms of the Reagor enterprise, they're not involved in that. They're just getting up and going to work and feeding their family. And although Lubbock has got a very low unemployment, often lower than the national employment, it's hard to absorb 700 jobs at one time.
And politically, do you think it'll have any impact on city council members, the mayor, state representatives? I mean, Bart wasn't a huge political donor. It's been mentioned that if in fact something criminally, did happen, that some of the politicians who've taken money from him should give it back. What's your take on that?
Well, I can tell you, I've taken money from him, but it took a long, long, long time for him to ever donate to the Republican Party, and he finally did make a donation and sponsored one of our golf tournaments. I'm not in a position to give it back. We're a donation-based organization, but you're correct. There wasn't, to my knowledge, a lot of political dollars. Bart, for you could say a lot about him as far as how he supported the community. I've been at the Boys and Girls Club fundraisers and others where he dumped a significant amount of money into the community, and we're going to feel the impact of that as well. He was always that guy that you could count on for a pretty big donation whether it was Make-A-Wish or generally an organization that was helping children. So, a huge impact's going to be felt by this community over Reagor Dykes. But, man.
Well, let's not, and not that you are, but we won't kick a guy when he's down, and we'll wait to see what happens. Oh,
absolutely. Like everybody, he deserves his day in court. He deserves to let this thing play out. But I just, I have to wonder, I don't think we've heard all of it yet. I think there's a whole lot more to come, and it unravels daily. And it's one of those things that I think even some of your best attorneys in town are having a hard time explaining what actually happened.
Yeah. Well, changing gears here for a second. John McCain passed away, of course, over the weekend, and wanted to get your thoughts as chairman of the Republican Party and someone who's been active in politics his whole life. How did you see John McCain yourself?
Well, I saw, first and foremost, I'm a Navy veteran, so I saw John McCain as a Navy veteran. Someone who represented this country, who joined the 7% that chose to serve, and that's how I looked at John McCain. John McCain was a statesman, and I think that he represented his constituency to the best of his ability. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. I didn't agree with every policy and every position that the guy took, even in the later years. But I don't think anyone can say that he didn't work at his job and he didn't represent America as a senator.
Does it strike you as kind of interesting, though, that the Democrats and the liberal media are all jumping on the bandwagon saying what a great statesman he was and what a great guy he was? And do you put that up to the fact that he and Trump didn't get along the last couple of years?
I honestly don't think it's relevant. I mean, you've got the Clive. I even had someone on the local party Facebook page this weekend call him a traitor. And I just deleted it. It's not time for that. I think the time for positioning after someone's gone, I just don't think it's. I don't like it. We can agree to disagree on his politics. I didn't agree with a lot of things he did or said, but he went forward and he represented a constituency that may or may not have asked him to take the policies that he took. And all we can ask is that each of our representatives out there, our state representatives, our state senators, and our congressmen and our national senators, that they at least listen to the people that they're representing, and they go forth and represent us to the best of their ability.
We're going to take sorry, Steve, we're going to take a break
Sure.
and come back and talk about another senator who's coming to Lubbock right after this.
Yeah.
And we're back on the Chad Hasty Show. I'm Matt Crow, substituting for Chad, who's off on his cruise. You can call us at 770-5790, toll free 1-800-687-0790. And as always, the text line, 806-680-2790. On the phone with us, Mr. Steve Evans, the chairman of the Lubbock County Republican Party and a former Navy sailor. Steve, what did you do in the Navy?
I stared at a radar screen and engaged aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It was the highlight of my career, and a little bit of air traffic control. We got a little bit in common with Jody.
Oh, good. Okay. So back to McCain. Yeah, it seems like you couldn't find two polar opposites in Republican politics than John McCain and Trump. Is this an example of the big tent in Republican politics? On the one hand, you've got Trump, kind of the new Republican, and then on the other side, you got John, the old or the establishment Republican. Because as much as John was a maverick, he was still part of the establishment.
Oh, absolutely, and I think you're seeing, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're seeing the young versus old, even though they're, and I mean young in politics versus veteran in politics. This probably a good argument for term limits. You go and you serve and you get out of DC before it makes you cynical and hard. And I think maybe McCain just didn't pull out in time and go home and do something else before he just got too cynical. But I think we're seeing a new style of politics with Donald Trump. It's one that just baffles everybody's minds. The tweets, the messages, the way he conducts business, but no one can say that it's not effective. We look at our economy. Donald Trump is working. The model is working. So I think you're always going to have those old time veterans in the House that are going, the House and Senate, that are just not going to agree with the young politician.
We got some text messages alluding to a story about John being one of the people to cause a horrific fire on the Forrestal when he was a carrier pilot. I've seen that story before. It came out in 2000 when he was running against Bush. That was a nasty primary campaign, and there are a lot of things that were said about McCain. There are a lot of things that were said about Bush. Politics is a rough business, but I think you would say, would you agree with me? McCain gave as good as he got. I mean, when you went after McCain, you got it pretty good back from him. A lot like Trump.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm intricately familiar with the Forrestal fire. It's actually a training scenario for every boot camp grad that goes through basic firefighting school, and then when you you get onto your ship and go to advanced firefighting school. The Forrestal is something that's constantly brought up and what went wrong. McCain absolutely did not cause that. It was a faulty missile that fired off an F-4 that started it. McCain's going to lie in state in Arizona, and then he'll lie in state at the Capitol, and he'll be buried at the Naval Academy. Do you think veterans will be as well represented in the Senate and on the Hill now that McCain's gone? Well, I certainly think we lost a fighter on the Hill, but when you lose one, you gain one, and I can't say enough about Congressman Arrington taking the fight for veterans to the Hill. So I think the energy that we may or may not have lost with the loss of Senator McCain, Congressman Arrington, and those committees have certainly picked up the slack. And I still think that veterans are very well represented.
I know I want to keep you till after the break because I didn't get to what I really wanted to talk to you about this morning. But in just a minute we've got left before the bottom of the hour, John McCain chose Sarah Palin as his vice presidential running mate when he ran against Obama. Are you one of the people who thought that hurt him or that helped him?
That's difficult to say. I had kind of mixed emotions about it. I think, you want to talk about polar opposites. Sarah McCain is so much more like Donald Trump than she was ever like John McCain. But I think in the end it probably hurt him. I think that it appeared, at least on the surface, that wasn't a really well thought out pick. The campaign didn't think out how they were going to handle that, and she wasn't fully prepared to go run a campaign beside John McCain as a vice presidential hopeful.
Well, initially he wanted Joe Lieberman, I guess. So that was kind of outside the box.
It almost seems like she was just kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
So I think on the grand scale, it probably hurt him quite a bit.
We're going to wrap it up for this half hour. Stay with us after the bottom of the hour news. We'll have Steve Evans come back, and we'll talk about another senator coming to Lubbock. And we're back on the Chad Hasty Show. I'm Matt Crow, substituting for Chad Hasty. Listening to News Talk, 95.1 FM and 790 AM, KFYO. You can text us at 806-680-2790 and call in 770-5790. After Steve Evans, we'll hear from Captain Jeffrey Kline, United States Navy, out at the postgraduate school in Monterey, California, who had worked with McCain on the Hill, and get his view on what the future holds for the United States Navy and for the Department of Defense without McCain. And still on the line, Steve Evans, chairman of the Lubbock Republican Party here. Steve, you've got a little bit of news for us this morning about another U.S. senator.
Yeah, and this is one of those deals. It happens quick. We get very little notification, but Senator Cruz in town again for another retail stop on Wednesday afternoon, 3 to 5 o'clock at the Back 40 Grill at 98th and Slide Road. And I think we need to do our due diligence here, Matt, and we need to throw some caveats in here. First of all, the campaign picks their venues. They pick their stops. The local party has no control over it. We got a lot of angry people at me from the last one that were mad about the venue and mad about the whole thing because they couldn't get in. But I think what Senator Cruz is trying to do is rather than have a great big massive rally, is do some more intimate, smaller stops where he can shake more hands and take more pictures. So another opportunity to come see him, and I won't tell you that if you've already been to one or made it to the one at Triple J, you shouldn't come, but maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you ought to leave that seat for someone who hadn't got to see him yet, but once again, that's up to you. No ticket is necessary. That was another bit of confusion we had there. The campaign is using the Evite system to spread the word, but it does have an RSVP ticket option down there. Just because you click it and you get that free ticket does not guarantee you're going to get in the building. The fire marshal's still dictating the number of people that can be in the building, and once it's full, I'm sorry, it's full. You'll have to listen from outside or try to catch the next one. Not leaving anything out, Matt?
I don't think so. What do you make of Cruz coming back so soon?
I think it's probably a response. A lot of the calls that I've had are people upset. We're not doing anything. Beto's working. There's campaign signs out. And I think it's important to remind everybody that it's not even Labor Day yet. And typically, you don't really start the November campaign until after Labor Day. And Senator Cruz is no different. I think that Beto O'Rourke started early, and it kind of stirred people up, especially in the Cruz camp, saying, man, he's out here working and Cruz is doing nothing. I don't think that's necessarily true. He's just not doing what Beto's doing. So I think this is probably a little bit of a response to some of Beto's efforts. He's coming in and doing some up close and personal meet and greets with constituents to show that, yes, he is here. He is campaigning, and I think we'll see a whole lot more coming up in the future. In addition to all that, the Lubbock County Republican Party, our newsletter server is down right now, so we haven't been able to get any newsletters out, but we are working on putting some phone banking together. and some block walking. The campaign is working with us on getting us some materials so we can go out and knock on some doors. There's also, we're going to do some phone banking parties coming up, probably at our headquarters, or if we need to move to a larger venue, we will. But stay tuned and pay attention to the Lubbock County Republican Party Facebook page, and we'll put out events for those. And in the meantime, you can download the Cruise Crew app and sign up to be a phone banker, and then send that email over, the email address you used to sign up, over to me, chairman@lubbockgop.com, so we can get your account activated, and stay tuned for those phone banking parties.
You know, the new Marist poll over the weekend showed Cruz with a 49 to 45 percent advantage over O'Rourke. Do you think that's going to widen or narrow going into November?
I think it'll widen, and I don't believe it. We've seen very little polls come out. I don't know what the sample set is on that one, but you know, it's so hard to make me believe polls anymore. We looked at the polling data that floated around during the Trump campaign. It was all wrong. The analysis was wrong, and I think it's extremely hard to poll West Texas in a statewide campaign. And you know, I would love to see Senator Cruz win by at least double digits. I hope that's the case, but I do think we'll see the margin start to widen as Senator Cruz really kicks that November campaign off after Labor Day, and it gets into full swing. You'll start hearing the media drops, and you'll start seeing the activity happen after that.
O'Rourke kind of put his foot in it the other day when he was talking about the NFL players taking a knee during the national anthem. Did you catch any of that?
I caught the aftermath of it. I didn't hear it come out of his mouth, but O'Rourke seems to be taking every unpopular hot button issue he can and trying to drive it home to apparently reach a base of people that are, I'm going to say, maybe conservative fence sitters that are not turning out to vote or undecided. Maybe you're moderate or establishment Republican types. He's trying to find those issues that appeal with him to garner a little bit of support. Yeah, we've seen it. It doesn't work. But I'm happy for him to keep trying and wasting his time on it.
Well, I'll put it to you directly. Why should people vote for Ted Cruz rather than Beto O'Rourke?
Why should you not vote for the most conservative candidate out there? That's you want more money in your pockets. You want a better economy. You're going to vote for the conservative candidate. If you don't like your money and you like just paying for other people's programs and you like full open borders, then Beto O'Rourke's your choice.
He's kind of being painted right now as kind of a hippie. Is that going to keep the traction with voters? I mean, that kind of line, kind of a dope smoking, rock and roller kind of thing. I mean, is that going to stick through the campaign, or do you think these guys are going to take it up a notch and talk about policy?
It seems to me that he's isolating a voter section, maybe 18 to 24 year old college age voters, and we actually have a lot now. They are doing some pretty heavy voter registration, and college students can vote on a limited ballot even if they're not home. They can register to vote. They will be able to vote in statewide races. So you're seeing this push for this 18 to 24-year-old vote out there, and he seems to be appealing to that. Whether it's all that effective and what percentage of that vote actually turns out, I don't know. We talked about Congressman Arrington and the VA committee, and we talk about the committees that he sits on with Congressman O'Rourke, and it's just kind of hard to put the two even in the same class.
Real quick while we got time, go one more time on the Ted Cruz event this Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. I recommend you get there a little bit early. Back 40 Grill. So I actually eat lunch there a couple times a week. One of my favorite places, 98th and Slide Road. Come out and see Senator Cruz for the next retail stop.
And he's going to take a picture with everybody who goes to the rallies.
Take a picture with everybody. And consequently, I'm guest hosting Pratt on Texas that evening, and we're going to make a biggest push as we can to get him on the show that evening, too. So maybe we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Great. Steve Evans, everybody. Thanks, Steve. And right after the break, we'll come back with Captain Kline from the United States Navy out at the postgraduate school in Monterey. And welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. I'm Matt Crow on KFYO 95.1 FM and 790 AM. Joining us from a real lousy part of the country is Captain Jeff Kline, United States Navy, retired in Monterey, California. Jeff, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Matt. I'm doing fine. Yes, it is nice here, about 65 degrees, a little overcast, certainly not the heat that you all are receiving.
Well, two things I wanted to talk to you about. Of course, over the weekend, Senator McCain passed away, and kind of a legend in the Navy and a legend in the Senate. Can you talk for about, just your own perspective personally, what you thought of Senator McCain, and then from the standpoint of the Armed Services Committee and the DOD budget and so forth. Tell me what you thought about McCain, kind of the Navy legend.
Well, the Navy legend is a guy that was he was the third of a series of naval officers. The McCain name is known for two admirals, and then he was the third to follow in that long line of tradition. He was a little bit of a radical, though. There's all kinds of stories about him in the academy, but then, of course, he served in Vietnam and was later taken prisoner. He served honorably there. The newspapers today are filled of both laudatory comments on his time as a public servant, even then, and testimonies from his fellow prisoners about how he was a source of strength. John was wounded several times while he was a prisoner. Interrogated, his arms broken before he was finally released. And so as a naval officer, he provided almost the example of what to do when you're a prisoner of war and how to resist your enemy. Interestingly enough, I think that's where his stance on torture and any form of torture should not be an American tactic, even for our worst enemies, because I think of the experience that he had there said that this was not a humane thing to do. So
John McCain's background and experience in Vietnam and in the Navy, and then, of course, you mentioned his dad and his grandfather were admirals, gave him kind of a unique perch to sit on when he was Senate liaison to the Navy a while ago. Do you think that there'll ever be another former naval officer or military officer who could kind of command that kind of respect and authority that McCain did with armed services?
I think it'll take a while to grow one, but I think there are young leaders out there, maybe they're serving right now, that will get out and then run for office and hopefully assume the leadership that John McCain did. It's funny you should bring that. Those that love the service the most are sometimes its harshest critics, and at times John McCain supported, he supported military spending almost 90% of his votes, but at the same time he was not beyond criticizing where he thought we were making mistakes, and he did a good job of that. But to get back to your question, yes, I'm optimistic that we have leaders in the Navy today that will grow and become the new John McCain. It may take a couple of years, it may take 10 years, but we'll see them. I see these junior officers at MPS every day come through, and I'm extremely impressed with both their leadership and their dedication to the country.
We talked about McCain's reputation, and he had a short temper. He didn't suffer fools gladly, and I think that stemmed, of course, from spending 5.5 years in North Vietnamese prison camp. And my sense of John McCain was he's always trying to make up for that time. Dealing with the DOD budget, though, you put your finger on it a second ago. He seemed to have a special place of agitation for some of the budget numbers, particularly when it came to the Air Force. And I don't think it was an inter-service rivalry type of thing, but the Air Force really took it in the shorts with McCain when it came to some of the larger aircraft purchases. And is that something that that senators need to keep their eyes on? I mean, the DOD budget is so large. With McCain gone, I mean, who kind of keeps their eye on all that? I'm not saying that we don't need to spend that money, but he seemed to have a real axe to grind with Boeing in particular.
Well, I think it was the programs themselves, and you're right. He reviewed the Air Force spending quite closely, and he was not beyond criticizing that. But then, at the same time, if you look it up, he blasted the littoral combatant ship program as well, as an unfortunate and classic example of waste. So I think he was strong on defense spending, but he did not want us to see us not throw our money away, and he also didn't want to see gold-plated programs that we couldn't afford with limited budgets at times. So I think he, as I said, because he loved the service enough, he was sometimes our harshest critic.
Well, and this is the time we've got left, which isn't too long. Any other thoughts about Senator McCain, Captain McCain, the aviator, and how he formed kind of the discussion on Vietnam? There was of course, he went back to Vietnam with Senator Kerry at one point.
Well, he did. You know, the other thing about John McCain is that he was an internationalist. He was a Republican, but he believed that it was important for the United States to continue to be engaged throughout the world, mainly because we had the strength in order to provide the stability that the world needed to enhance trade for everybody. And his continued support of the operations around the world kind of showed that. But my final thought really on John McCain is he was someone to be emulated, and I certainly hope that we find politicians in the future, or statesmen, I hope, in the future, that can fill his role as on his passing. We've
been talking to Captain Jeff Kline of the United States Navy, retired at the Naval Postgraduate School. Jeff, thanks so much.